So tell us a little bit about your the novel that you're going to be taking a sabbatical in the fall to work on this novel, which you put a little teaser out on Twitter, which was, I believe it was the first page of the novel.
Yeah.
Which is a hell of a first page. I mean, that you got so much into that first. I'm talking about a hook. I mean, I retweeted it because I thought people have to see what someone can do on with the first page of a novel to get your attention.
And well, that's been revised, 50 times before that, because, part of it helps me in the process to have at least one page where I can say, okay, this is what I want it to sound like.
Mm-hmm.
And this, give it some momentum, give me some things to keep writing about. So yeah, that's part of the reason I put it on Twitter. I'm like, okay, I've revised it enough. I need to put it out, see what it feels like to put that out into the world. And yeah, it was good. It's a good experience. But so that novel is very, very loosely based on the Lewis and Clark expedition. So, some details are still being worked out. I have a rough draft of it. I still have a lot more work to do. Kind of starting the second draft, but still thinking of it as a first draft, because I could go in I'm going to try out some things and go in different directions with it. But it's about this kid who sort of hijacks his way aboard the Lewis and Clark expedition. And he's kind of going out west in search of his mother. His mother is Native American, and she ran away from home. His father's white. And his father is abusive, and he wants to go figure out why his mother left him and at least talk to her, see her again. But he has no idea where she went, and he has no idea how big the West is. And so he just learns about Lewis and Clark heading west on the Missouri River, and he wants to be a part of it. So he does get on board, and he starts heading west. And part of the original premise for this novel was that at the time, if you read anything about Lewis and Clark expedition, the white and mixed race crew members on that expedition had no idea what they were going to find, and neither did Thomas Jefferson. For them, for the non-native people heading west, that was just a big blank slate in the middle of the country. They didn't know what they were going to find, and they legitimately thought that there might be woolly mammoths still living there, giant sloths still living there. They'd seen the bones of these things, and they figured they must still exist somewhere. And I think that's partly a religious view. Like at that time, pre-Darwin, God didn't invent things that expired, right? Species that expired. There must be some reason for them to exist, and so they must still exist somewhere. So they were looking for them. I mean, Jefferson told them to look for these things on the expedition as they went west, as well as, probably the primary purpose of that expedition was to open trade routes across the country, see if there was a path to the Pacific, open trade routes with the Native Americans, and the white Americans at that time were very much afraid of the British and the Spanish coming in, establishing trade relations, which had already been done to some extent with the Native American population, and having a presence in that area, basically taking over that area and blocking off the United States. So that Jefferson, after the Louisiana Purchase, he wanted to go in there and establish this trade relations. And actually, Lewis and Clark went beyond the Louisiana Purchase all the way to the Pacific eventually. So that was kind of their main purpose for going out there, to open up those trade routes and find a path to the Pacific. But Jefferson had a real scientific interest in and anthropological interest in the Native Americans, but also in the geology of the area, the archaeology of the area, flora and fauna. And so Lewis and Clark had to keep copious notes on what they found. but they didn't know what they were going to find. And so some of the other things they were looking for were like the lost tribe of Israel. Another tribe they thought they might find was the so-called Welsh Indians. Well, there was this story about 13th century group of Welsh that sailed across the ocean into the Americas, got lost somewhere in the West, and they still existed supposedly. So Lewis and Clark were often asking when they came to some of the traders and some of the Native Americans that they ran into, like, is there a tribe of white Indians around here? You know, we have to make contact with them. So some of these things just sound ridiculous to us, but they really didn't know. They really didn't know what they would find out there. So my idea when I started the novel was like, what if they found everything that they thought they were going to find out there? What would that be like? Well, it's changed a bit since then, but there's going to be some weird stuff in there, and including some time travel where the main character ends up hopping a wall that's a highway wall on an interstate highway. He's suddenly in the present day. He's hitchhiking, ends up with a trucker, goes to a truck stop, and he ends up in Reno at some point.
Oh my gosh.
So there's some hopping back and forth over this wall, and so I'm going to have a lot of fun with it. It's not going to be a realistic novel in any way,
clearly not your typical historical novel. But
I had a great experience researching it last fall. I got a grant to go follow the Lewis and Clark Trail from St. Louis all the way to Astoria, Oregon. So I took about 2 weeks, rented a car, flew into St. Louis, and just followed the Missouri River, like all the way up into North Dakota and all the way across Montana. Ended up at the Pacific, and
wow, that sounds like
so many great things.
Amazing trip. Yeah, wow. So that was a great grant to have allow you to do that. Jeez. Yeah. So you took copious notes and ate a lot of fast food.